You're listening to the Contrary Beekeeper Show.
This episode is brought to you by Nature's Image Farm. If you're interested in nucs, packages, queens, or supplies, visit us on the web at naturesimagefarm.com.
Do you want to help support the show? Follow us, Dan and Christie, on Facebook and Instagram at Red Dog Ranch.
Do you need a logo, graphic, or web design? Check out Blask Media on Facebook and Instagram. Now, on to the show. We're here in the shop, and today we're going to talk a little bit about what has been going on this year in the bee yards. What are we doing? Where are we going? How come this year has been so good? What is the price we're going to have to pay? And are we going to be facing another
intergalactic alien war?
Intergalactic alien war?
Yes.
From the lizard people?
And the Greys.
Are we waiting for the elite force from the Planet X Nibiru to show up to save us all?
I'm pretty sure it's the Illuminati that save us all.
Welcome back to Coast to Coast AM with DJ Barracuda. Did you ever watch the George Norrie or listen to George Norrie, Coast to Coast AM?
Not as a child, but I've been on long road trips, and I'll definitely turn it on in the evening hours.
Yeah.
It's wild. Wild.
There's something about it where you just can't stop listening.
No. And when
unlike this show, where at this point, if you're still listening, thank you. Dan's mom.
Yes, very much so. But we're 5 more minutes in and she'll be asleep again.
Yeah.
So, how is your spring going?
It is absolutely bonkers.
Yeah.
Between the getting moved to the new place and getting all the stuff set up here at the shop, getting the learning yard set up, trying to get a wood shop put together to build all the stuff. And then there's like the actual beekeeping part.
Yeah.
Which is just a whole other, it's one, if you're a beekeeper, you need to be some type of a craftsman. You also have to be into woodworking.
Yep.
You got to be, of course, into agriculture and farming. Pay attention to all the different types of flowers and weather patterns, and then
moon cycles.
You also have to be a fortune teller.
Yeah.
And try to see into the future and see what in the world is going to happen. But I have never seen a spring this good ever.
Yeah.
I mean, ever. Every now and again we'll get black locust on, but this year it has been, absolutely nonstop since about the 1st of April. There are folks right now who bought packages from us that are literally getting ready to pull off 5-gallon buckets of honey.
Yeah.
On a handful of packages.
Yeah.
But Dan, you're not supposed to pull honey off your first year.
It's impossible.
And bees can't do that, Dan. What? I don't understand.
I don't get it either.
What I do know is the bees don't seem to read the same books that the people who tell you what your bees can't do
read. But the real question is, can bees read?
This is the sound of my mind blowing.
And you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Bees have an understanding of the number 0, but they can't read. So where they learn geometry and math?
The Anunnaki? Is this secret
information
passed down through the Akashic record?
No, I'm really trying to figure out. I remember reading an article that bees have a knowledge of the number 0 and how to build upon it. And it's one of those wild things that are out there for people that just like to read anything bee related. But where they learn how to do it?
I don't know. The more I learn about bees, the more I just accept that I don't know anything about these bees.
Yeah.
They just constantly amaze. Today, you and I were out catching queens, and you saw the coolest thing in the entire world.
Wait, which one? Because 2 things happened to me today that's never happened before.
Do tell.
So we'll go with the first one that's cool. I found swarm cells. I want to say they're swarm cells. I found cells because it was a queenless hive. I found cells in the hive, and I went to pull them off, and there was a young virgin queen that just jumped right out onto my finger.
Little baby virgin queen.
And I was like,
mama,
and
she found old DJ.
Like, Greg, I found a virgin in this hive, and he came over, and oh, okay. I go, no, it's on my finger. And that's when you finally set your frame down, came over and looked and go, yeah, that's a virgin on your finger.
And then you found another one.
I found another cell, and I was like, I wonder if I'm really lucky today. And I slowly peeled the tip back, and there was a little antenna going back and forth, and they were hours out from hatching because as soon as I peeled that one back too, that one jumped right out. And I was like, hey, you got another queenless hive to throw this in?
It's the coolest thing in the world when you see stuff like it and you're working in the yard and like you've gone through, okay, this one needs a queen or this one needs this, da-da, da-da, da-da. And then you pull a virgin out like that and just boom, direct release her right into a colony. She dives right in there. Everyone's like, oh, cool, we have hope. And it's super cool. There's so many things that you'll hear repeated at bee clubs, in books, all kind of this stuff that I don't understand where some of this talk comes from. I can understand maybe why it gets repeated, but there are so many things that are hard, fast rules that your bees cannot make honey the first year. Do not take honey off your first year. If you ever see any kind of a cell being formed in a hive, then they're going to swarm and you can't turn it back, and they're going to do it. They're just going to keep making more. All these little, we should have an entire show. Not that we want to talk bad about what some folks are trying to say. It's just there is so much misinformation and beekeeping myths that are put out there that we see here on a daily basis that is absolutely, you would say, maybe even contrary to what the folks are saying the bees should and shouldn't do.
That'd be a really good name of a show.
What folks should or shouldn't do?
No, the contrary something or another.
That's a great idea.
What you make me think about is, though, for the longest time, it was a hard, fast fact that Varroa mites only fed on the larvae of young bees.
Yeah.
For, oh gosh, don't quote me on this. It was like 40 plus years. And then here you have some guy just doing a doctoral thesis paper, completely flipped the world upside down because he just proved, it says, I have a picture of Varroa feeding on the fat body of adult bees. And that for me was kind of my turning point. And it was also a point in my beekeeping journey to where I had some experience in it, and it was enough to like make me a little dangerous. And that was the moment I realized that there's no absolutes in beekeeping whatsoever.
You should. You could very easily have an entire episode
of
an entire year
yes.
of all the things that we see that are absolutely contrary to what is written as fact.
Yeah,
I am very leery of any book, of any speaker, of anyone with a YouTube channel that speaks in absolutes.
Very much so.
Because there are no absolutes, and especially in beekeeping.
Yes. And this came, and what made me really think deeply about it was this came from a very high academic level that was considered a proven fact. And it's the way that it was. And then here it is overnight, everything flips.
And the trouble with these kind of things is when we are trying to rely on the, you can't see me, but in quotes, science of beekeeping and methods and practices, like we get into a lot of trouble really, really fast. Let's be honest. Everybody wants their bees to live.
Yeah.
We all want to do right by our bees. And trying to figure out why bees are dying and why this and why that is a labyrinth of a bird's nest of idea and practices that I don't know that you can ever really untangle by going to one source or a handful of modalities of thinking. But for instance, this whole mite wash thing.
Ooh, this is about to get really controversial. Yeah, buddy.
I'm trying not to have my blood boil with this. But how many of us have done what we think is right by our bees based on what science tells us, what the bee club tells us, what the book tells us? Do this, first it was sugar roll, and then it was windshield wiper fluid, and then it was, no, you need a higher test of windshield wiper fluid. No, you need a higher grade alcohol, and then no, now you need 90% alcohol. No, it has to be fresh alcohol with an expiration date of blah, 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 blah. And the goalpost keeps getting pushed further and further and further away, and we keep doing the absolute best that we can. And now we have thresholds that say, well, once you have an alcohol wash of 2%, it's time to treat. Okay, cool. Well, and here's the science, and here's the backing, and here's all the reasons why, because of the mite life cycles, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And everybody gets on board, and they do that, and their bees still die, and they find out that their bees are dying from mites because they are using the same metrics, they're using the same treatments, and it's not working. And it's absolutely infuriating when you're watching your colonies go downhill doing all the things that you think is right and you're told is right and the science is right and da-da-da-da-da until you finally take your beekeeping into your own hands and you find out that, oh, maybe this line that's being put out there isn't indeed a fact.
Yeah. I don't think any of this is being pushed as a malice intent or anything like that.
You sure?
Yeah.
Lizard people.
They haven't really gotten big into bees, though. They're more into beef and pork.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Processing plants.
Yeah.
Mass cattle deaths.
Mad cow disease.
Herb spirals.
Yeah. Yeah, what was it? The bird flu? They're all behind that one.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think any of this is really with like a mouse intent. I think that we are... One of the big things I see is in the bee world, we're dealing with issues that a lot of times haven't been dealt with before. And now we are getting technologies catching up to a place to where we're able to find out more information in such a rapid rate, whether it's the laboratory side of it or the just public consumption side of it. And I think everyone's trying at least to do best with the knowledge they have at hand. Sometimes some people can be lagging behind with it. Or and I know some cases they're just set in their ways. And it kind of makes me think of the Dawn dish soap.
Are you trying to get me fired up, Dan? I was just cooling off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You want me to go get you a box to stand on? But I think
there's not a soapbox big enough for this conversation because it is absolutely infuriating.
When was Dawn dish soap first actually talked about as a way to count mites?
I really didn't. It didn't even come into my circle of picking up on the latest and greatest. I don't even think it was until probably I heard about it a lot in this past January, but it would have been Randy Oliver just a year prior.
And I brought a bottle of Dawn to the old farm.
Right.
Late summer, early fall to try to figure out what it was about this.
And that's where things got real.
Really real. And I don't think any of this is being pushed with any hostile intent towards anybody. I think what we're finding with the Dawn...
You don't think the 90% rubbing alcohol market, big ag rubbing alcohol conglomerates are just laughing at us right now as it's killing our... I don't.
Their stocks are going to tank.
I don't think so. I'm not saying that there is a a conspiracy with the New World Order that's attacking our bees. What I'm saying, and what's so infuriating, is that it is so easy to get caught up in the poor mindset of trusting science, of trusting the things that you read, trusting the things that you hear as being gospel truth.
Yeah.
And being too afraid to take the reality of the situation into your own hands, process it through your own eyes, through your own mind, and say, no, this is not what's going on here. And I'm okay with saying otherwise.
Now, have you ever seen like a YouTube video or heard someone explain a method to make splits or make queens or things like that, and you just automatically think that's not going to work without trying it? Or that might not be the best way to do it without trying it?
Yeah, it might not be for me.
Exactly. So now to put the shoe on the other foot for you, how many people look and say, who's this Greg Burns guy, and why is he using stuff he stole from his wife's counter or underneath her counter?
That's a false statement, Dan.
I know, because I brought it over.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you brought me, brought me the dish soap.
But look at it from that, because in the real world, no one really knows who we are. And at the same token, how do people know that our information isn't the same as everyone else's? Do they realize that we are trying to do best by the bees? Or is it we're just trying to do best with the knowledge that we have?
I don't know that we get to know the answers to some of these things.
We don't. And I try really hard to look at it from an outside perspective. I do think that Dawn does better than rubbing alcohol. I can prove it to you. We have it on video. And we've done it multiple times. But it's still a very adolescent theory. And until I think there at least is some commonality between a larger group of beekeepers that see the same result, and it still stays repetitive, which it's been repetitive every single time we've used it, that we will start to actually see traction with it.
For folks, if you're not aware of what we're talking about, and if you're wondering on why these hillbillies are getting so worked up over Dawn dish soap and rubbing alcohol, this is a big deal.
Massive, massive deal.
It's a big deal because when we are trying to treat our bees, we need to come up with a baseline first to say, hey, our bees are in this condition right now at this point in time. Okay, so in the past, we've used 90% rubbing alcohol to wash the bees, and with a 300 bee sample, we count the mites in the bottom of our wash cup, and it gives us a percentage. It's been recognized for quite a long time that a lot of folks are using the 2% threshold. When we have a 2% of our population of bees is with mites, time to treat before it gets out of hand.
Now, is that 2% number contextual? Because I've heard of other places that it's the 1% threshold.
In some places, it was 4%.
Yes.
The threshold...
It depends.
Depends, and it's based on the beekeeper.
Yes.
And also, like, if you're in... Let's say you're in South Georgia, right? What is it? 2% now could probably be very quickly turn into 8% in 4 months.
Yes,
or even less. Where in Ohio, because of our weather and the way our brood breaks and the length of our season, 2% is about the point typically where those numbers are based on the exponential growth rate of the mite and their life cycle, the brood cycle of the mite within the brood cycle of where you're keeping bees for the most part.
Yeah.
There's also other areas that might be hot spots for mites and things that we know, okay, this is at this point in time, they're going to exponentially curve and spike and do this and da-da-da-da-da-da. The problem is 2% was a very conservative number.
Very.
And it is like a lot of folks would say you're kind of treating too early if you're treating at 2%. So we've always tried to treat at 2%, and we're still watching colonies crash. A lot of you've probably seen the video on our YouTube channel at Nature's Image Farm, where it is the alcohol is the mite wash video, alcohol versus Dawn dish soap. And in that video, you can see me process all this information. And it was thanks to a listener who asked us to take a video on how we do a wash. So we did a wash, and we thought, hey, Dan just brought over this Dawn Ultra dish soap. You and I were talking about, hey, Randy, y'all ever had some information out there? And if this works just as good, then why use alcohol?
We were also in the middle of a pandemic, and it was extremely difficult to find rubbing alcohol.
And ain't nobody going to waste some high-test hand sanitizer as they're making it home to wash bees. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. So we thought, okay, cool, let's do that. Let's see what happens. We'll run an A-B comparison. And in the video, you'll see we take bees from the same 2 frames. We take 2 frames of bees out of this box, sealed brood and open brood, emerging the whole picture of brood. We shake both frames of those bees into a ProNuke plastic box. We bump that ProNukes down into the corner to where all the bees are kind of jumbled up. And then with our measuring scoop, we take a scoop out and put it into the alcohol wash cup, and we take a scoop out and we put it into the Dawn dish soap wash cup. So bees from the same 2 frames, from the same corner of the box, sampled at the same time, and watch the video to see what the numbers are. It blew our minds.
Yeah.
The Dawn Ultra dish soap had so many more mites in it that when I'm finding it and I'm counting it out, I'm freaking out.
You know, if you tell them, they're not going to watch the video.
I can't remember what the numbers were.
You're really bad with these cliffhangers.
I know. It was like 2.8% with the alcohol and like I think 7.4%.
Yeah.
Somewhere right around there with the Dawn. That's a big deal.
Yeah, and for me it's a massive deal. And for me it's not really about the threshold that I've been told to treat at. Cool, people do whatever you want. I can't stop you from doing you. Great. But for me, I'm getting bad information on when I want to treat. I'm not seeing the full picture. So
what are you seeing though?
I don't know.
I'm seeing bees keep dying through the winter, and when I look, it's every single sign points right to Varroa.
Yes.
Even when the alcohol washes are showing 0 and 1%.
Yes.
And then we wash the same sample of bees with the Dawn, and it's showing us 3 to 5%.
Yes.
The 2% number with alcohol, I think, is bogus.
Yes.
And I think it is way too low of a threshold. If anything, we need to be using Dawn Ultra dish soap at a 2% threshold. With the correlation puts alcohol at 0.5%.
Yeah.
So I think if you're going to use alcohol, 0.5 should be the number to jump from.
Yeah.
You do your treatments. Then you follow up with another wash to see if it actually worked. What happened in that video, I had 2 choices. In that video, as I'm thinking, and the camera's on, I either I go and abide by the 2% rule by all of the educated folks in the scientific community says to do.
It's not that.
Or I don't.
It's 2%'s been the general rule by everybody. That at least I know of. I say
it is. That's been the accepted number was been 2%.
That's better, the accepted number.
Okay, and now I got this Dawn number, and I'm thinking, man, if I treat this like the alcohol, and it's like a little over 2, not a big deal. Boom, we do this, da-da-da-da, we'd be fine. But I decided that inside, my heart was howling, and my guts were knotted up, and something on the inside said, no, you got to get serious with this. You got to treat this like with your Dawn number. So what did we do? We treated some hives with the Dawn number, and we treated some hives like we would have with the alcohol. The colonies that we treated with both Apigard and oxalic acid that we used at the same exact time. Yeah. We used the oxalic acid in our Larabi's vaporizer to knock down the phoretic mites. Yeah. Whatever's hanging out on the outside in phoretic, we still want to pop them immediately. So we used that. And then we also put a round of Apigard on, followed by another round about 10 to 12 days later. When we came back, time got away from us from the rest of that fall. Yeah. In the springtime, the colonies that thrived and survived and were looking good were the ones that still had the treatment shim on and still had the Apigard card on top of the frames with a little crystal residue of the thymol. What did that tell me? That told me that my mite levels were so high that extended release from that thymol is probably what knocked the mite load down.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Massive. If
I would have not have done that, this is, I'm not exaggerating. If the viewer, the subscriber didn't ask us to take that video, and I didn't find that information right then and there, and decided to course correct when I did, I would have very likely just kept cruising on what I was doing, which would have ended up looking like maybe one round of Apigard.
Yeah. I personally, I don't see it as the perfect magic bullet by switching to Dawn. I see it as, instead of looking at it through a drink straw, we're now looking at it through a toilet paper tube. We get a little bit bigger of a picture of what's going on. By no means is this the perfect way.
Right.
Do we know the best way to do it? No.
Mm-mm.
That's the unique thing about the scientific community, is it's always asking the question. That's why we have the scientific process for a reason, to where you always get better and better and better. I think it's definitely going to be really unique to see how well this year coming up is working with Dawn. And I would like to challenge you to something. If we got like 50 of the little jars, or maybe 100, go through and just do 50 comparisons side by side and actually take real data points on this to see what the difference is between, was it 91% isopropyl alcohol versus Dawn.
Here's what's crazy. When I get fired up about these kind of things,
You get fired up?
is it obvious? I'm trying to stay calm, Dan.
Your cheeks are rosier than Santa Claus right now.
I'm upset with myself. I'm upset with sometimes feeling like it is not okay to challenge the accepted line on anything. We have always been contrary, but sometimes it's because we're hard-headed and we're stubborn. But sometimes when you don't feel like you know all the details and know all the different things and the nuance between mites and their relationship with the honeybees and what that really means and why are they affecting the bees and all the nuance and the details that surround the entire picture, it's very easy to get lost and not feeling like you're confident and taking the correct step. A lot of folks also find that even though they have made the right moves last year, it might not be the right move this year for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Could be product concentration. It could be other things going on, new viruses, different impacts that they actually have on the honeybees, and it always keeps us guessing. I think that's what brings a lot of us back every single year.
Yeah.
Is these bees always keep us on our toes. We're always learning. We're always trying to dig in. I think the big the takeaway here is not whether or not Dawn dish soap is better than alcohol. The takeaway is, don't get complacent, don't get comfortable, and don't just rely on whatever information you think is the leading authority of information based on any of these things in beekeeping.
Yeah.
You have got to go see the bees. You have got to go spend the time to actually observe and try to do it unbiasedly as possible, and actually look and see. Those bees will tell you. You know, when we're out here and we're doing an alcohol wash and we're getting like 0.5 and 1% with the dish soap, those bees look incredible compared to what the bees would look like when we were at 1% or 2% with the alcohol. So metrics aside, you can look at the bees sometimes and just get a sense. Beautiful laying patterns, wall-to-wall brood. Everybody has a shiny coat. There's a certain vibe to them. They're doing their work. Everything looks awesome versus the ones that are sick or lethargic or struggling or they have an attitude problem or they're extra spicy. The list kind of compounds. There's all these reasons why, but we can't get complacent and we can't get too comfortable following a certain regiment or a program or a protocol, and definitely not subscribing to a certain doctrine of how to do some of these things, because these things are changing so fast.
There's a phrase that I had in a previous life that you just made me think of, and it's complacency kills.
Boy, ain't that the truth.
Yes.
What would we be doing right now if we were talking about sugar rolls and how great powder dusting our colonies with powdered sugar is for mite control?
I hear it's a pretty sweet thing to do.
I see what you did there. Did those things work? Did they work 10 years ago? Yes. Do they work now? I'm sure. to a certain extent.
But that's because we're in a very fluid environment.
That's true.
We are dealing with issues that, going back and reading L.L. Langstreth's book, hardly any of the stuff we deal with today is what they were dealing with back then. And all these things like, when did Varroa take off?
Right.
When that swept through, that was an unprecedented thing. And then before that, we've always had like wax moth pressure. Then there's hive beetles and things like that. It's always a very dynamic environment. And that's why I try not to get really bent out of shape about it, is because I know things are moving. I know there are a lot of people trying to do their best at what we can do as a whole to best do good by the bees. I think at times that some people just grasped a little too tight and don't accept that newer things are coming out. So I think the community can be a double-edged sword.
You got to be able to pivot on your heels and beekeeping is an art.
Very much so.
Bob Benny has explained that and has talked about the art and the wisdom of beekeeping and how these things kind of fit into the whole picture. But a lot of folks also, as a person, as a human, they identify with aspects of beekeeping. It's an expression of themselves. It is an art form. Mm-hmm. It's more than a hobby. It's sometimes less than a hobby. We all have a different walk with those kind of things. So sometimes when we identify and we invest physically into the labor, financially into the equipment, mentally, and all of the thought patterns and things that we put into thinking these things through, spiritually, even if you spent time sitting in a bee chair watching the bees, you have to at some point understand there is something going on there that's way bigger than ourselves with these bees. It's easy to get invested in all the different aspects, to where as soon as you start to see something working, you want to latch on because it feels like it's the right thing, and this and that and the other thing. But you also at the same time have to be, like you mentioned earlier, fluid enough that when you start to see and pick up on the feedback that it might be moving in a different direction, you have to be able to say, hey, okay, I see that. What can we do? What's the move here? If that means a different type of a feeder system, a different type of a lid, a different type of a hive configuration, different kind of a treatment or a placement or then you have to be able to say, okay, cool, I'm going to go ahead and do that. How many different lids have we used and materials to where every time we build them, we're like, man, this is the best.
Yep.
And then now, after a couple years and things are rotting out prematurely, and then they do this and they do that. Right now, your wife and my wife, they're in the other building, and I can hear them just hanging out, having a good time. The better halves
clucking like hens
are wax dipping all of our cheese board lids for our colonies.
Yeah.
Made beautiful lids today. They've been in use. We've trialed them now for an entire year. It's stuff that we picked up from the Werners down in Florida. They've used forever, and John Knox. It is the bee's knees, and so now we're moving to a lot of that type of materials, things that have lasted the test of time, knowing that there'll be something better in the future, but it's sometimes uncomfortable. A lot of these things with beekeeping are uncomfortable.
Very much so.
Because they force us to really put in the thought and to constantly reevaluate what it is that we're doing, to possibly accept the fact that is not that what we are doing is not going to go the way that we had hoped, that we had wanted, that we had dreamed, or we had envisioned.
Good. Now what? You learn. Yep.
Right? When your marking pen is laying out in the hot sun with the nib down.
What's a nib?
A nib is a little chisely point
the felt
thing.
tip?
The tip.
Okay.
The tip of the pen.
Yeah.
When that thing is pointing face down in the hot sun, and then you've got everyone crowding around to see how you mark a queen, and then your buddy from Castle Hives has the video camera right in front of you, and you're actually trying to position this queen. You're not trying to mark it. You're trying to get the queen into the camera and then you're trying to get it to do just so, and you take that really hot paint marker, nib down, and go paint it. And you have told people a bazillion times, before you ever mark the queen, just dot it off on the side of the box or the lid. And what does Greg do?
Not dot it off.
He got complacent. Right? I was only focused on getting the queen and the pin and the shot, and so everybody else could see what was going on, and got complacent, popped the cap, stuck it on there, gave her a bath in yellow paint. The good news is she's still laying up a storm. She's totally fine, which is a whole other myth that, oh my gosh, if you get paint on more than a thorax, if you get it on her wings or her body or her legs, those bees are going to kill her, destroy her. She won't be able to walk around and function, and she's doomed.
Might as well just dipped her in a bucket of yellow paint at this point.
I mean, luckily her eyes are still good. But she's laying up a storm. Anyways, it's getting late in the evening. We can get grumpy. We've been out here all day long, and so I don't want to come off like an old grump when it comes to these kind of things.
But you are old.
It's fresh. Another 40 joke. I mean, you guys just don't stop. You just don't stop. I don't know, Dan. What do you think? What can we do? Do you think what can we do to not get complacent?
Be curious. 100% be curious.
Yeah.
There's never, like I've said before, there's never an absolute in beekeeping. There's always something in like the evolution of our lids. There's always something that's going to be better. But the only way you find that better is to be curious.
Always be of a mind that, hey, what if, or why is this, or that? Yeah, because then it's a never-ending learning process.
And if not, I'd still be painting plywood lids, praying that it doesn't completely fold apart on me, and just here in a year, I'm replacing my lid.
Right.
And it's because I had curiosity. Well, I know this doesn't work. How can I improve on it?
Right.
And so that went into concrete form boards. Then from there, that went on to dipping form boards. And then now the fourth or fifth version of that, we're doing cheese boards. Curiosity is one of the greatest traits of mankind. And it's one of the things that's brought us so far to where we are.
I think if you're of a mind where you're always trying to dig in, do better, improve, then I think you have to be of that mindset. If you're going to really grow, I think, as a beekeeper.
Is it to improve though? Because for me, it's laziness. If I build a lid, I want to build one lid for that hive.
You say that, but we're trying to improve our outfit. We're trying to improve our operation, not necessarily size or scale, but the efficiency. We're trying to improve where we're spending our time and efforts. And
I can take you on the efficiency one, because when I build something, I want to do it one time and know it'll last a good bit.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not like taking a lid and say, well, if I bevel this at 32 degrees and I bring this back here, then maybe more rain and snow and da. No, that's not what I mean by improve. We're improving the functionality of something.
Yeah,
we're trying to find a way that we're evaluating the cost for the use of something, for the obsolescence is going to be at this point in time. Does it make sense to spend this much money on this kind of material? What's that going to look like long term? How much weight is that? How does it work on a 4-way pallet? How does it work on a regular stand or on the ground? We're trying to just, I think, improve. I'm trying to improve me. I'm trying to improve myself as a beekeeper, of course, as a father, as a husband, but trying to, always trying to do better all the time. Dig in, make the improvements where I see opportunities to do it. And I think how else do you and I go from having a couple hives, in the backyard to talking about potentially sending a load of bees to California?
Curiosity. That's how we did it. A lot of it for me is, can I do it? I'm curious.
Push. You got to push.
I'm a naturally curious person. My mother would be chuckling if she didn't fall asleep at the 10-minute mark, But as a little kid, I was a curious person. I remember her retelling the story. I wouldn't know how a camera worked, so I took one apart. She was not really happy. I just took the family 35 millimeter camera apart. But I think that's one of my best traits is that I know that I'm curious and I'm a tinkerer. I can't just leave anything alone.
That's true.
I very much can. I can't sit still either. But that is what I think has really proved me with a lot of success, at least in my own eyes, what I think is success, to where I always want to try to do better. And I always try to do those things that either save me time or save the bees a little bit more. So if it falls really into those two criteria, I'm all about it.
Right.
And I've tried some really wild stuff, but I don't know what happens. Like if we releasing a virgin into a hive.
Right.
Why? Why'd you do it?
Try to fast track the time that it takes to get a colony requeened. I wanted to see, what do they do? How do they gather around her? What does she do? Does she dive? Does she run? Is she scared? Do they attack? Are they mean? Do they accept? Is she going to get in there? Is it going to fast track the time frame on a cell? Or we get this colony queen right even quicker? There's that moment where it's so minute in the time frame, but you see that thing, and for a second you're just stuck. Like, I saw that queen on your hand.
Yeah.
I took the queen from you. Open up the lid. I put her right on the top bars. And she's, how virgins are, they don't fly, but they're kind of chilled out, and they just walk and crawl and die. And I put her in there, and it was the coolest thing. It was like she's diving off the diving board and going right down into the colony. She just has this archy, and she's trying to get down into the box. And I just cracked the frame just a little bit, and she just gently and gracefully swoops down, crawls down, and just dunks herself right into the colony. And the bees are like lovingly surrounding her, and you get to see, like, in that moment, the curious mind says, what happens when I put the virgin in there?
Exactly.
But the person is too cautious, would say, oh no, I don't know what to do. I'm going to have to go watch a YouTube video. I'm going to have to go read a book. I'm going to have to go. I'm too afraid to lose this virgin queen, or I'm too afraid to have this hives do whatever they think they're going to do. But for me, I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
Let's crack the lid and see what happens.
Yeah. Or
let's run her in the front door. Or let's coat her in honey and then run her in the front door. Or let's coat her in a yellow paint marker and see if she'll live. I mean, you're right. There is something curious with beekeeping that you just have to know. You just want to see what happens. And the coolest thing is when you see something happen and then you go to try to repeat it, and it happens again, and it happens again, and then something changes, and it didn't happen like it always has.
Yeah.
And then you try to replicate the change, and then something else happens, and then you realize, oh my gosh.
So you know what you just described right now? The scientific process.
I'm not against the scientific process.
I know you're not, but that is driven by curiosity.
I am against the scientific process of somebody not taking the science into their own hands and doing something
exactly.
with it. I'm against relying on whatever XYZ College of Beekeeping or Institute of whatever to say, here's how you do it, because we did these studies in our very, very blind placebo test of 3 colonies in this context, which is totally out of bounds and has nothing to do with you, your bees, and why and how you're using the bees. I'm all for, is it called citizen science? Observational science, field science. I'm all for folks having the courage to go out there and see if all the things that they heard is true.
Yeah.
To find out that, to not be afraid to just drop that virgin into a colony, to not be afraid to cut those queen cells out and make a bazillion splits, to not be afraid to get in there and see what the bees are doing, and be of a mind that if something doesn't go the way that you thought it should, good.
Exactly.
Dig in there and find out why. And that will make you a way better beekeeper when you're learning right there from the bees.
Understanding the why of all of it. That's huge.
It's massive.
Yes. And we all when we first started out, we knew, we had an idea what steps to take at what time of year because that's what we were told. And for me, that was the deep dive that started all this was, well, okay, well, why am I putting on a 1-to-1 syrup in the spring?
Or why aren't you putting a 1-to-1 syrup on in the spring?
Yeah. Why does it have to be 1-to-1? Is this the best option? Or is it the most convenient just to say aloud? Because depending on some people, was it Bob said like 1.3 to 1 is the closest you can make to wild nectar. So why are we doing that? My second year, I ran 2-to-1, probably a very heavy 2-to-1 because, well, if they're going to be storing it and eating it, well, why are they going to spend the energy to get the moisture out of it? So it led me down a lot of different paths. So it's a very, very,
it's never ending.
Yeah.
Is there a plastic foundation that I can put in these boxes so that when I'm fooling around with all these deep frames, that I don't have full frames plopping out of the, natural drawn comb or wax and wired stuff getting funky and hot when I'm trying to build and sell Nucs? Is there a plastic that's going to be solid and firm and doing its thing that the bees actually like? That curious thought led us to getting a hold of Jeff Johnson at Premier, to where we trialed it out. That was a whole thing.
Yeah.
That completely changed the face of our beekeeping.
You can probably go back to previous episodes and listen to our stances on a lot of things and how it evolves through the year. And that's one of the unique things I really love about doing this podcast for me personally, is I can go back and see how my thought process has evolved through time.
Yeah.
I personally know I held some hardline opinions on things, and that has changed throughout the year. The big one for both of us was when we thought that not treating bees was the greatest thing ever and they're a natural thing and we can keep them just the way nature intended.
Oh, Dan, we were having such a good podcast episode. Luckily I just don't have it in me tonight to go down that road.
You mean go get another box of soap real quick?
Oh my goodness.
It's not necessarily going down that rabbit hole again, because we already have. It's the fact that we were curious. We are able to have enough
you have to be able to challenge yourself.
Yes, exactly.
And say, hey, I've said this, but hey, I'm going to challenge myself and see if this is where I'm really at with this, or if I'm comfortable enough with this and what I think I know or understand to like rapidly change and go a completely different direction. A lot of folks won't do that.
Self-awareness, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
We have enough self-awareness to where we can look and really question our beliefs on, is this the best thing to do? And I think for me, that is a lot of where I've gone to, or a lot of the reason why where I am now is because I know for me, I'm my harshest critic. And so it's kind of easy for me to always question myself. And I second guess myself a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Which I should probably not do, but
what's interesting with you, Dan, is over time, you are also getting in tune with this little hillbilly checks and balances compass thing on the inside, and you go with it. And I know that you have a lot of experience going with your gut.
Oh yeah.
In situations. And in my experience, going with our gut on a lot of these things puts us in a very positive and way healthier situation than if we sit there and second guess and replay this, or what if I did this, or what if I do that, you stall out, you don't make a move. Sometimes, You just need to take that one step in a direction, and that a lot of times validates that little gut feeling that you had to say, hey, the alcohol is not working.
Yeah.
Let's try the Dawn. Oh my gosh, look at these Dawn numbers. Now what do I do? Oh, oh. Then that little thing goes off on the inside and it says, buddy, you need to treat this situation like it's serious and it's severe, because it is.
Yeah.
And then that has been one of those other opportunities that completely changed our outlook and our approach with the bees, and the bees are way better for it.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about.
That's what it's about, is doing the best we can for these bees.
Yep. And by doing that, we make more bees, or in my case, I make more honey. But at the end of the day, it's what's doing right by the bees.
That's it. Do what's right by the bees. Don't get complacent. Don't get too sure of yourself. Definitely don't get too cocky. Beekeeping is the greatest humbler I have ever known.
Very much so.
And these things are going to happen. Good. Work through it. Yep. Do better.
At the end of the day, there's always a better beekeeper somewhere else.
Well, this has been a better spring than I have ever seen, ever.
Oh, we're going back to this?
We got to finish up on this.
Oh, gosh. Okay. I just kind of figured we went off the rails.
What I want to talk about just here in closing, there's a yin and a yang, and there is a balance, and that scale has to be tiered. There is no unlevel scale when it comes to these things. We cannot have a spring this good and not pay for it. It's what I feel on the inside.
Yeah.
Did we pay for that last year? Are we going to pay for it this year? But this spring has been so good that it's mind-blowing. We got every single flow. We got.
Yeah.
Everything. All the apple, all the locust. Right now, the blackberry, the multiflora rose, everything that is major, and when it flushes and it's just right, we end up with honey-bound colonies in May, and we're splitting ferociously all May, and the next thing you know, your bees have grown 3 and 4 times, and you're out of equipment, and you're scrambling, and you're doing this, and you're doing that, because the bees are growing so incredibly fast. The pollen is through the roof. Like, it's been, there are bumper years in agriculture, and I think this year is a bumper year. The spring, I hope the entire year is. Something on the inside is telling me to be very careful and to be very cautious on expecting this kind of yield all year long. I don't know what it is. I don't know why, but inside is my inside little flag. The voice on the inside, that little gut feeling is saying, don't get too comfortable, cowboy, because there's going to be some changes coming this year. I don't know what that is, but I feel like with anything in life, there's a balance, and it's been way too good. How has this spring been for you guys up at Red Dog Ranch?
I have honey everywhere.
Everywhere.
Absolutely everywhere. And I was definitely not prepared for what came. I was definitely scrambling to put boxes on to at least try to mitigate the backfill of honey into the brood chambers. It has been absolutely insane. There's no other way to put it.
Folks are complaining this year that the nectar flow is so hot and heavy that the bees completely stop drawing foundation.
Yeah, mine did.
And are doing nothing but just trying to sock it away any way they can.
Yeah.
Anywhere they can.
I had some undrawn boxes out there, and they literally crawled over the undrawn foundation to go one box up to store it in drawn foundation.
I saw something today, absolutely blew my mind. I've never seen this. Well, that was cool. Dan actually caught a laying worker in action, and we took video of it. And we have the most absolute, surefire, only way to fix a laying worker situation, and you'll have to see it in that video.
So we think it's the only way.
And remember what we said about absolutist only way thinking.
Yeah, you probably don't want to listen to anything we said.
What I saw on the bottom board, okay, a standard 3/4 bottom board.
Yeah.
The bees drew wonky wax on the bottom board to store nectar at the entrance. What? And I have never seen.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like horizontal wax. It was goofiest thing I have ever seen on the bottom.
Yep.
They could have gone up and drawn comb, but they were trying to get it. It was almost like they're trying to get a home, build some kind of a kitchen cabinet as fast as you can.
Yeah.
As close to where it's coming in at so they can sock it away. Here's what worries me. I'm not an alarmist, but it's almost as though they are ferociously socking it away like it's going out of style. Like it's coming in so hot and heavy for some reason, maybe it's not going to the rest of the year. Planet Nibiru is in full bloom as we speak. Maybe it's a seventh sign.
I should sleep more before I do these things.
We could just go on a whole entire tangent.
Oh my gosh, the crazy things we've heard.
Or say to each other on the phone all the time.
Oh, very much so. People are like getting a real taste of our conversations for once. I think
What do you think though? Do you think we can have it this good and it just be this good the rest of the year?
Well, how did it, if you want to follow the yin and yang, how was the fall?
Terrible. One of the worst falls ever.
Yeah. So is this the recovery for that hard fall?
I hope.
Because we dealt with a lot of losses just because everything stopped and went stagnant. Spring
was finally normal-ish in Ohio. Like we didn't have the big heavy swings. You know, we had the old timers would say 3 snows after the forsythia blooms. We had that.
Yeah.
We might have got even one extra one. Like we actually had regular spring weather, and the plants responded in turn because of that. What does that mean moving forward? I don't really know. I think the biggest thing is it's going to be a matter of fall flow.
Yeah.
So while we could...
I really want a huge fall flow.
If we get a huge fall flow, I mean, I don't know what the yang would be. Maybe we've already paid. Maybe this is balancing the scale.
Yeah.
But the hillbilly inside of me says you have got to be a little more cautious than that. You have to start preparing now for it not going right later. And in my mind, how things would not go right is going to be weather.
Yeah.
It's going to be, we're going to get into a situation where when we hit dearth this year, maybe we actually hit dearth. We get some high temps and we get some low rain, and we start not having the typical wildflower run that just kind of keeps things steady. Like maybe we lose all that and we get into July and August to where they really start robbing heavy. And now we're banking on fall. We're banking on goldenrod and the fall flow. Maybe we do or we don't get it. If that's the case, well, what can we do about that?
Move to a place that has more goldenrod.
Which is?
I don't know. But we need to find that magical place.
There's goldenrod out right now. The first plants are starting to come up. So it's going to be another, month before that starts to bloom.
False goldenrod and then, Oh, yeah.
So it's coming. Whether it blooms and does anything is the question. In my mind, I'm going to be careful, I think. How I prepare for this is a win-win. I think my plan for the rest of this year is we are all caught up on all of our nuke orders. We are getting caught up on the spring queens. The nectar has actually been so good, it's actually affected our queens because in a lot of situations they were plugged out and they had no place to lay.
Yep.
And so they actually can put us behind 2 weeks or so on getting queens out because although there's a very developed and a fat, plump queen in there, if I can't if I can't see that she has all the stages of larva and sealed brood, I don't want to ship that queen personally.
Yeah.
And I've got situations there where they're plugged out with protein and carbohydrates that opportunity is not there. So how do I prepare for that? I think I'd be careful on how many splits that I make, how hard and lean I make those splits. And I think what I do is I just bank on the spring is so good, the bees are busting so great. I think I'm going to try to make all of my last splits and make my heavy, very conservative, like you talked about earlier, 5 and 7 frame splits.
Mine were beyond conservative.
Is that crazy to say we're making 5 and 7 frame splits? Because within 3 weeks, that single is exploding and then needs a box.
Yeah.
What do you think? What is your play for the rest of the year?
Here within the next month, make the last of my splits, and then from there, and they're all going to be heavy, at least 5 frame splits, and then from there it's just cruise mode. Get ready for winter. I'm trying to reel back being a gambler. I like to let things ride and push the envelope a little bit, and sometimes it's come back to bite me.
Oh, it bit you.
Yeah,
it might bite you.
Yeah. Sorry, it's what is it, 11:15 now?
Is that late?
I don't know. It feels late.
Oh. It
11:07.
is. Oh, man.
I'm good.
Wow, nailed it.
But I'm trying to be a little bit more conservative in my moves. I definitely want to increase honey production. So being as wild as I was in the past kind of showed me where my limits are. And it kind of showed me the limits of what I can do and what I can't. I'm not saying being wild and crazy with bees in the past was a terrible idea.
Oh, right.
It kind of put my bracket on what I can get away with and what I can't. So I know how to now do things in a more calculated manner. So it's for us here in the next month, we're done with splits, and it's going to be gearing up all of our splits for production next year. And for me, it's trying to do it the cheapest way possible, and that's just put some feed on them and let them cruise.
That's what I like is being able to get them in a place where they can just cruise.
Yep.
Can we make a split and a queen with a handful of bees and a queen cell?
We've done it.
We've done it. Can we split a package 3 times? Yeah,
we've done it.
We've done it.
Have we done it 4 times?
Well, we split the split of the splits and then split that split at least one more time to make the last split.
But have we split 4 off of a package?
I think I've only gone as far as 3. And there might be a video of making the 3-way split with no veil with some really grumpy bees that decided they want to come give me a little extra sugar on camera.
Oh, that was actually kind of fun to watch.
It's Dan. It's a lot of fun. On both of us, we are a support mechanism for each other. But
Very much so.
It's fun to see you grow in your journey with bees. It's fun to do a lot of these things together. It's fun to see us physically and mentally make shifts and moves in different directions with all these things, which all continue to, as the kids say, level up the game and what we're doing in the beeyard with our bees, with our equipment. We're making more calculated risks based on what we know we can get by with, to create the baseline to say, okay, we want to gamble. Hey, we can do this, but the result is probably going to be ... Does that fit into where we're going with things right now? If it is, okay, great, we can do that. If not, we want to see a different outcome. Okay, then let's do this. And then we're getting all this new feedback. I think we're finding this weird place where we're not getting cocky, but we're starting to get enough confidence in ourselves to make good choices, and that we are comfortable saying, okay, I see this and I see that, so okay, let's try this. Where a lot of getting going in beekeeping is trying to figure out, what in the world am I seeing?
It's calculated moves.
Yeah, calculated.
Because we have enough knowledge to be dangerous. We can fill in a lot of the blanks on the questions of, like, previously curiosity. We've done enough dumb stuff to know what happens, and we're just now filling in some of the smaller portions. We know how wild we can get in springtime when apple blossoms come on.
Right.
We know that July for us here in Ohio is kind of when you got to start reeling in the craziness.
Tighten it up.
And start getting ready for winter.
Right.
But we figure that out with a lot of dead bees.
Right.
A lot of dead bees. But also, too, if we didn't do that, we would have no idea.
And the only point of reference that we would have is because somebody said this or da-da-da-da-da. You got to sometimes learn these things for yourself to give you that solid point of reference to make all those decisions moving forward. As we've gone from backyard and to flirting with hobby and then flirting with small sideline to now run in several hundred colonies, it starts to add up, and you start to have to learn to make the right moves at the right time, and then you grow exponentially, and then all of the risk is mitigated, it's calculated, and you move in the direction that you want. At the same time, holding each other accountable and saying, hey, we're not going to get complacent. We're going to keep trying to look at this with fresh eyes and not be afraid to make new moves or try a new thing and try to do this. Like you said, to stay curious. And at the end of the day, to do the best we can for these bees in our context, at our scale.
The greatest advice I would say is find a trusted person and just call them and start the conversation off with, I need a sanity check.
Oh, man. That's it.
Yep.
Sanity checks.
We've had a lot of those conversations start.
It's yeah, for sure. Well, Dan, it's getting late.
It's beyond late.
We've already had a day and a half.
Oh, gosh.
So thanks again for you and Christie coming out and helping here in the wood shop. And
it's a great time being out here.
The farm here. We'll see you again Saturday for the learning yard here at Nature's Image Farm. We'll have our bee folks out to learn hands-on and 5 and 8 frame equipment, 10 frame, Apame, horizontal hive, you name it. And also we'll have out our military veterans. You'll probably have some of your Hives for Heroes newbies. We'll have some of ours here too. It's a great time. If you are a beekeeper and you want to do what's right and you want to help folks out in any way that you can, even if you didn't serve in the military, if you want to serve those that did, consider signing up at hivesforheroes.com to be a newbie and or a mentor to help folks get into a good place with beekeeping, see them be successful. It's a great organization. They're doing awesome things. We are absolutely honored and humbled to be a part of it. And it's so cool to see all these folks out here finding that common ground, which is beekeeping, and all just being a lighthouse to each other and just moving things in a positive direction. If you want to find more about Red Dog Ranch, you can check them out on the, as the young kids say,
the IG
at Red Dog Ranch, Ohio, Facebook at Red Dog Ranch. And if you want to find out about Dan's prior film career, we'll just leave it at that. Look up DJ Barracuda. DJ Barracuda.
God, my mom's going to hate you for that one.
We're going to try to get some videos out here in the future too. At the Nature's Image Farm YouTube channel. If you want to learn more about what we do there, check it out. Visit us at naturesimagefarm.com if you're interested in 1-gallon bucket feeders, the feeder plugs, wax-dipped hive kits, Robbie's vaporizers, you name it. We appreciate you guys listening. We appreciate all the years you guys have kind of followed us along too. We've gotten to know so many of you. And I think that's one of the most rewarding things about doing this is making the connections, meeting the people, seeing them on the bee runs, kind of seeing them in life popping up everywhere. It's super awesome. So thanks again for watching. Wow, this crossover stuff is just hard, man. Thanks again for listening to the Contrary Beekeeper Show. As always, be the lighthouse.
As Ted Lasso says, be curious.
And be the change you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
recorded in front of a live studio audience.
There you go. That's cool.
Hey, that'll work. How about that?